Thank you for joining me here on the last segment of today's show. Just going over some injuries that have developed over the course of this last week, talking about some pretty important players going forward for some of these teams and how they're dealing with these injuries and what it means for these teams, how long are they going to be out, and things like that. So, we're going to start off with the New York Giants, a couple of injuries that they're dealing with after the first preseason game, starting with Drew Lock, who started that game, if I'm not mistaken. And on Thursday, he was hurt in his second series, I want to say. He limped off the field a little bit there. DeVito came in and, took over from there. But Drew Lock, in this opportunity that he has now with the Giants, it was a pretty big moment for him to go out there and, try and win that backup quarterback spot at least in the New York Giants roster. But he was hurt. He's expected to miss some time with a hip pointer and a strained oblique, sources told ESPN. So he's likely to miss a couple of weeks. The Giants are expected to sign an interim quarterback because they only have Danny Dimes and Tommy DeVito as their only two quarterbacks on their roster right now. So it is unfortunate for Drew Lock, to be out for a couple weeks, probably missing out on the next preseason games that the Giants have. So that's a bit of a bummer there for Drew Lock. I don't know if it's going to be too big of a shift in terms of the backup quarterback role for the Giants. I think pretty much Daniel Jones is going to be their guy, and I don't know if they have as much confidence in Tommy DeVito to be that backup quarterback up until right now. I feel like Drew Lock really had the edge over him, but it is an opportunity for Tommy to go out there. Unfortunately for Drew Lock, dealing with that hip pointer and a strained oblique, but that's Drew Lock. And then on the other side of it, just on the same side of the ball, Malik Neighbors, a bigger headline, obviously, because it is Malik Neighbors and how much stock has been put into Malik Neighbors already to be this X Factor game changer for the New York Giants as of right now. Not even really being into his first regular season. He's already, I think, getting most of the attention as to being the go-to guy for the Giants. But on Sunday, he left practice because of a left ankle injury. He did not return during that practice, and it is right now believed to be a minor ankle sprain, which is a big relief for the New York Giants because obviously those ankle injuries are pretty tricky to deal with. You don't really know what the severity of it is or how each guy's gonna recover from it because all of them are a little bit different. So the Giants right now believe that it is a minor ankle sprain, and the practice on Monday, he didn't take part in that, and Brian Dable said afterward that he was feeling a little sore, on yesterday, actually, I should say. He's day-to-day right now, but it seems like he could be ready to play in that Houston game. I think he said today that he feels no worry about missing that first game at the Minnesota Vikings. So it's not something that it is, going to drag on most likely. I probably don't expect them to play at Houston, which I do believe is their next preseason game. But for the regular season, in terms of potentially missing out on that, I don't think there'll be any worry with that. Malik Neighbors has ruled out the possibility of being out of that game. So if he's feeling all right and the Giants say it's a minor injury, there shouldn't be any worry there. But it was a little bit of a scare there because Malik, again, there's a lot riding on him right away, being one of the best receivers in this year's draft, and now also, no Saquon, and this team is just dying for any sort of excitement. Malik was supposed to be that guy, and dealing with this ankle injury, hopefully it all goes quickly and smoothly for Malik to get back out there as soon as possible. Another injury that was pretty significant over the course of last weekend, where everybody played the preseason games, was on the part of Marquise Brown. He signed a one-year deal this year with the Kansas City Chiefs to be one of their main guys at the receiver position. Obviously last year they didn't have too many go-to guys in that regard. Rashee Rice was probably the best one out of the group, and they didn't expect him to take that big of a leap right away as a rookie. So not only do you have Rashee Rice, but you have Marquise Brown now that you added. You drafted Xavier Worthy, and now this roster overall, this wide receiver room, is looking pretty promising. But unfortunately for Marquise Brown, he suffered a shoulder injury known to be a dislocation of the sternoclavicular shoulder joint. I hope I said that right. In the first game against the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday, and it was right away just in that first play. I think it was a slant to Marquise Brown from Patrick Mahomes, and he was tackled and he fell on that left shoulder, and now he got hurt and obviously went to the sideline. It didn't look too promising just from how he was holding it and how they were dealing with it on the sideline. He actually had to go to the hospital during that game or after that play, but he was cleared to leave on Sunday, which is a great sign, obviously, and it was announced just today. But in the moment, head coach Andy Reid mentioned that this was actually the same injury that Tyreek Hill suffered in 2019. And when Tyreek suffered that injury back then, he missed 4 weeks. And the first game of the week, or first game of the season for the Kansas City Chiefs, they're obviously playing in the opening match on Thursday against the Baltimore Ravens. That matchup is just about under a month away. So it was announced today that Marquise Brown is expected to miss, like Tyreek was, about 4 to 6 weeks to fully recover from this shoulder injury. And, it puts him there right on the brink of potentially missing the game. I don't know if they're going to rush him back or anything like that, or maybe he recovers from it a lot sooner, but it's pushing right up there against that first week deadline, and it could unfortunately mean that Marquise Brown could be out of that first game, a big one against the Baltimore Ravens in Kansas City. So not too great a news for the Chiefs from that regard. And similarly, another injury that I wanted to get to is just Nate Wiggins, the first round selection for the Baltimore Ravens, their defensive back. He also injured his shoulder on Friday's game, but the MRI revealed that it's just a minor shoulder sprain, so he's also considered day-to-day. He should be ready by the first game, but I could see him potentially playing in the last preseason game because the Ravens do seem pretty optimistic that he did dodge a bullet there and he should be all right over the next few days. And obviously now, to get to the biggest one, probably J.J. McCarthy, diagnosed today, I want to say, or late Monday evening with a torn meniscus. And it's unfortunate, it really is, for J.J. McCarthy, just because I mentioned just yesterday in my episode that went out during the evening time almost, and then the news broke, even later than that, that J.J. McCarthy suffered from this knee injury. He described it as just being a little bit sore. He was dealing with some knee soreness, but over the course of, the first preseason game and now getting back to practice, they looked at it a little bit more in depth. They had an MRI on it, and it did reveal that he did tear his meniscus, and now it was announced that the Vikings and McCarthy agreed that he will go through knee surgery, unfortunately, and depending on what the severity and what the method is to try and treat this torn meniscus, it will determine how long J.J. McCarthy will be out for. The surgery already is going to have him out probably at the least, worst case scenario, is going to have him out for about a couple of weeks. But it all depends if they trim the meniscus or if they completely, go in there and restructure it and have to, reattach it essentially in, the surgery room, and when they decide to make that decision once the surgery does start. So it really just comes down between those two things. And again, it is unfortunate because we don't have a timetable. Once they make that decision, it's going to become a lot clearer. But if he is forced to miss a lot of time, I would feel pretty bad for him just because he had such a great start in that first preseason game. Maybe, getting the idea that he could challenge Sam Darnold for that starting quarterback spot. But now pretty much it does mean that Sam's going to be the starter. And it is unfortunate because I think JJ was surprising a lot of people this offseason in not only the combine, but the meetings and everything like that, getting drafted to essentially the perfect situation and having a great start in the preseason. Now to have this happen to him, it is unfortunate, and I don't like seeing it happen, but hopefully he makes a speedy recovery. But to not end this last segment on a negative note, there are some returns from injuries that I thought were pretty significant, starting with the Miami Dolphins. They took off Jalen Phillips, their young and promising pass rusher, off of the physically unable to perform list after 8 months of recovering from that torn Achilles. He is back now at practice for the Miami Dolphins, which is great news. Evan Neal, also the tackle for the New York Giants, was also taking off of the PUP list recently because of an ankle injury he suffered in November. Deshaun Watson is another one. He is fully cleared for full contact going forward, so maybe we see him in one of the next preseason games, hopefully, to get a better feel of where he's at. And the last one that I just saw today also, Arik Armstead was also taking off of the PUP list for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's going to be a major contributor along with Josh Hines-Allen, along with Trayvon Walker, along that defensive line. All three of those guys are going to be pivotal for the Jaguars, so it's great news to have him back off of the PUP list to contribute right away to their practice. And that's pretty much it. Wanting to end this episode on a positive note in regards to injuries and talking about some of the guys that did come back over the course of the last few days. But with that being the case, we are going to wrap up today's show. I want to thank you guys for joining me on today's episode of the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. And please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the show as always. And follow the network on all forms of social media. If you want to see more of this show, check out both YouTube channels, the Podcast Network channel and the Sports Network channel, to give you guys another opportunity to see more NFL content in a lot of different sorts of ways, different sorts of media that you guys are able to see on both YouTube channels. And for the last thing I wanted to say, tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more NFL storylines and the hottest topics around the league with me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host. Thanking you guys for joining me, and I'll see you guys all back here again tomorrow.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to